everyone, we're going to look into the Anglo-Saxon law and their legal system in this video. So the Anglo-Saxon law was the legal system of Anglo-Saxon England from the 6th century until the Norman conquest. And we've also learnt that the Normans is likely to have brought in the common law, and the common law came from, they claim, Islamic society. And of course the Norman conquest was about the Catholic Church, which was infiltrated by the Khazarian Empire, giving authority for the Normans to invade the UK. So the Khazarian Empire was all around Khazaria, which would include Islam. So it's possible and even probable that common law came from the Islam world. Right. It was a form of Germanic law based on unwritten custom known as folk right, and on written laws enacted by kings with the advice of a witan or council. By the later Anglo-Saxon period, a system of courts had developed to administer the law, while enforcement was the responsibility of aldermen and royal officials such as sheriffs, in addition to self-policing by local communities. And I suspect there was some kind of passive works going on in the later Anglo-Saxon period, because I think that the Anglo-Saxons were basically the Germans and the Northern Europeans who were protesting against the Catholic Church. They were turning away from the Roman Catholic Church. And I think that the Roman Catholic Church had sort of taken on Christianity to try and bring these Protestants in. And this isn't, by the way, me criticising Catholics. It's me criticising the Catholic Church, and it's also me criticising the manipulation done by the Khazarian Empire to take over. And that would have been the Pharisees, I believe, at that time anyway. So originally each Anglo-Saxon kingdom had its own laws. As a result of Viking invasions and settlement, the Danelaw followed Scandinavian laws. In the 10th century, a unified kingdom of England was created with a single Anglo-Saxon government. However, different regions continued to follow their customary legal systems. The last Anglo-Saxon law codes were enacted in the early 11th century during the reign of Knut the Great. Knut. Before Christianization, and I believe paganism did not stem from the belief system necessarily of the people. I suspect that there was paganism running alongside Christianity at that time, and I think that because the Roman Empire was imposing itself on the UK, or England and Wales and the Celt nations, I think that just as you get today, I think you can see a lot of what had happened back then in how society is today. So there's a tolerance for various religions coming into the UK right now, but that doesn't mean that they are all pagans. I think a lot of people will turn to that whole idea of paganism and worshipping and you know, tolerance of various different gods. And I think that that was going on in the multicultural Roman Empire as well. And of course, the Roman Empire was bringing over people from Africa and Asia, and we're getting the same again. So it goes round in cycles. We're, having all these gods worshipped in our nation at the moment, and there's a tolerance for it. And I think that will change eventually. But here we go, distracted. The native inhabitants of England were Celtic Britons. The unwritten Celtic law, and we'll have a look at that, was learned and preserved by the Druids, who, in addition to their religious role, also acted as judges. After the Roman conquest of Britain in the 1st century, Roman law was operative, at least concerning Roman citizens. Right, okay, so that's interesting that it reads like that, at least concerning Roman citizens, because I suppose in many ways we've got this two-tier system where you've got this equality, diversity and inclusion legal system going on right now, and that could be applied in the same sort of sense. Oh yeah, that applies to the Roman, the non-native citizens, and Roman citizens were clearly not the native citizens. But the Roman legal system disappeared after the Romans left the island in the 5th century. Okay, so I'll have a look into Celtic laws as well. In the 5th and 6th centuries, the Anglo-Saxons migrated from Germany, as Protestants I suspect, and established several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. These had their own legal traditions based in Germanic law that owed little, if anything, to Celtic or Roman influence. So we'll have a look at Germanic law. Anglo-Saxon law largely derived from unwritten customs termed folk right. And I've mentioned this before, but I feel that the written coded laws, they start to become messy because then they were written at a time when we don't really appreciate what was going on in that period of time, but they're still imposed on us many centuries later. And then of course you have your experts in these areas who come out, they're drafted out and then explain to the plebs, oh, don't worry you stupid people, I'll explain it to you. And they can really, just manipulate the meaning and definition of anything at that point. So I think we do have to turn away from experts, and I do believe that we have to turn away from experts, the so-called experts, the goody experts in the alternative media as well. I think that they are going to become a problem later on. The older law of real property, of succession, of contracts and customary tariffs of fines were mainly regulated by folk right. Well, I think that's right, Customary law differed between local cultures. Yeah, okay. There were different folk rights of West, East Saxons, East Angles, the Kentish, the Mercians, the Northumbrians, Danes, Welshmen. And these main folk right divisions remained even when tribal kingdoms disappeared and the people were concentrated in one kingdom. Right. I want to have a look at Germanic laws then. Germanic law is a scholarly term used to describe a series of commonalities between the various law codes, of the early Germanic peoples. Because if you think about Germanic law or German law today, it's all codified. So it's really, it's completely different to what the Saxons were about, because they were non-codified. So the whole fact that there was common law which was not codified, you know, they're claiming that it's an Islamic thing. No, it's a Germanic thing. It came from the Germanic peoples. These were compared with statements in Tacitus and Caesar, as well as with high and late medieval law codes from Germany and Scandinavia. Until the 1950s, these commonalities were held to be the result of a distinct Germanic legal culture. Scholarship since then has questioned this premise and argued that many Germanic features instead derive from provincial Roman law. Well, who knows? But I don't think that they would ever grant Saxons with any credit at this point. Although most scholars no longer hold that Germanic law was a distinct legal system, I think they were. Some still argue for the retention of the term and for the potential that some aspects of the leagues in particular derive from Germanic culture. Yeah, there's this refusal. I think what it is they cannot allow white people to have a culture. They have to sort of make it out that white people have never had this kind of culture and tradition within their systems and their environments and their societies. It's all because of the Romans, the multicultural Romans, and that's why we need to remember, you know, they're going to try and say that it was Roman led, which was multicultural, and that's why we need to go back to multiculturalism, even though multicultural Rome collapsed. Right, definition and controversy. I'm not interested in that. I can see where it's headed. Old consensus and criticism. Basically, it was uncodified. I think also they need to cast the credit of the common law over to Islam, because if you look at this common law, and they try, where was it? Oh, English law. I think it was English law. Oh. Here we go. I think it's this bit. Yeah, so the common law came into effect around about 1066. So this wasn't the one that I was looking at. It's really annoying when you... Oh yeah, possible Islamic origins. They're saying that the common law came from Islamic law. Let's have a look at Islamic law then. Because common law is not codified, it comes from previous case law. But our law has not been codified, and I think that's important. I think that's a really important part of our ability to at least attempt to hold on to our liberty. based on scriptures of Islam. When were the scriptures brought in? Because if that was codified early, then yeah, about 632. So Islam came a lot later than Christianity, a lot later. So you've got to wonder whether that was some kind of, you know, Mossad thing back then, with them being sort of so related and close to the Khazarian Empire, which was Pharisees led. I'm not sure why they think the common law. There's not even a section in here about common law. Case law. That's ridiculous. Common law came from Germanic laws, but particularly Saxon laws. Anyway, we're going to just briefly go back over the definition of policing by consent. I've done a video about it, but obviously the consent, I'm also going to be doing one about the philosophy of law, because the philosophy of law and law here is based upon you know, the idea that we need these rules and these particular rulers. And although there is a need for organisation and sort of certain elements of order, what we also know about this is that in the 17 and 1800s, they started going into industrialisation. So they started putting away people in the insane asylums. And once again, you see there's all this credit sent over in Wikipedia, made over to the Islamic world. And I'm not saying that, you know, Muslims are evil or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's no place for Muslim culture in our England and our Wales, you know, and Scotland. We'll do it our way. We don't need their you know, their influence. I'd like to see what we're capable of without all of these people bombarding us. I'm going to be doing something on, here we go, Herbert Lionel Adolphus Hart. Who was a legal philosopher, wheeled out to tell the Britons how the law will be and should be. Baron Devlin, we'll be talking about him and his ideas. But just briefly, who was he? Son of Rose Sampson Hart and Simeon Hart of Harrogate, moved from the East End of London. His father was a Jewish tailor of German and Polish origin. So they arrived here in the 1800s. His mother of Polish origin, so they would have been from the Khazarian Empire, the Slavs maybe, I don't know. daughter of successful retailers in the clothing trade. Oh, there you go. He went to a grammar school, and they are high-ranking schools. He became a barrister and practiced successfully at the Chancery Bar. He worked with MI5 during the Second World War, a division of intelligence concerned with unearthing spies who had penetrated Britain. Interesting. Where he renewed Oxford friendships. Okay. He worked closely with Dick White, later head of MI5. And then the gay mathematician and codebreaker Alan Turing. So a lot of MI5 stuff going on there. Which makes him his work skeptical. The reason why I bring him up is because he comes up a lot in the law degree. And the reason why that's significant is because a lot of people who are studying law are heavily influenced by this man who was MI5 and Khazarian. Hart married Jennifer Fisher Williams, a civil servant, bet she was. Later a senior civil servant, bet she was. And Oxford historian. Yeah, I bet she was. For some years, in the mid-1930s and fading out totally by decades, and a sleeper member of the Communist Party. I bet she was. Yeah. 3 decades later, she was interviewed by Peter Wright as having been in position to have passed information to the Soviets. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it, all of this? Their links to the Khazarian Empire. Anyway, his legal philosophical method, we'll go over that in another video. I just thought I'd quickly go over it, and we'll talk about who he is again in that video. But just a warning of the links which go back all these years, because they are very important. We need to know where all this influence in our society today is coming from, and be aware that they're trying to cast credit onto the pagan multicultural Roman society, when actually a lot of it comes from German Protestants who were basically protesting. I suspect they were protesting the Khazarian infiltration of the Catholic Church. I suspect they were, but they're all Christians, but they were protesting that influence going into the Catholic Church. And obviously that means that the Catholic Church and their religion has been altered in accordance to Khazarian paganization. So even the Catholics and the Protestants are all going to have to go back, and nationalists are going to have to refer back to their very, very earlier times when it all collapsed. Anyway, it's just a brief one, and we'll go over his arguments, his philosophy and his debates, and we will be questioning them since they are MI5 propaganda and being taught fully into our legal system. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks. Bye.